Hello everyone! In today's Fantasy Clash video we'll be taking a look at the Catastrophe, an alien race that has fallen from the stars. As usual, we'll be starting with the core choices available. And first up we've got the Soul Takers. These guys look weedy but be wary. In close combat you'll use the magic score to resolve the combat rather than the traditional method of attack and defense. This means if your opponent has a low magic score, then the Soul Taker will likely win the combat no matter how tough the card they are fighting. Next up we've got the Reapers, which work as a standard infantry choice. Slightly better in attack than defense, they have a better than average size score, so they should not be overwhelmed too easily. Lash Parasites are the annoyance card. You can use these to frustrate your opponent, as even though they don't do much damage, the high size score, coupled with the swarm ability, can cause issues and make them hard to get off the battlefield. The Boreworm is an interesting card. Its attack of 7 is okay, but it's very fragile with only defense of 3. However, what you need it for is its unusual tunnel ability. This allows it to move in a direct line to the next available free space, including in your opponent's own territory, so they have to be very careful when leaving spaces, especially in the back line if you get multiple Boreworms moving around. This can cause a lot of frustration for them and means they have to be very careful leaving gaps for reinforcements. And finally, we have the Biobomb. These are floating explosive sacks. Their combat stats look beyond terrible, but they are like moving landmines. If they are defeated in close combat, which is very likely, you'll get to roll a d6, and on a 3+, the card that defeated them is also removed from play. It would make sense for your opponent to try and shoot these with range attacks, so keep them close to their forces. Let's move on to the veteran choices. As a standard in Fantasy Clash, you pick 5 to start with. There are 4 different types, each with 3 cards. First off, we've got the Spiked Agony. This guy doesn't have any special rules, but instead specialises in straight combat with good attack and defense as well as a decent size score. If you take him, make sure he's in the thick of the fighting. Next is the Spitter. This card kind of acts like a war machine with its ranged attacks. While not as powerful as a full-blown war machine, it has none of the disadvantages either, so can move around the battlefield. It's slightly better than the traditional ranged card, so it should win any ranged trade-offs with regular archers. Seekers are another specialised unit. They are the scouts of the Catastrophe Army. Scout is a very useful ability that allows you to reveal face-down cards that are in range. This can give you a massive tactical advantage. Seekers also have okay combat stats as well, which means they have a lot more bite than traditional scouts. Finally, we move on to the Flying Reapers. While not as powerful as the Spiked Agony, they have the charge ability, so they operate more like traditional cavalry, getting a bonus when they are on the attack. The fly ability also lets them move 2 spaces per turn and also to fly over other cards, so you can get them out of danger and charge multiple times over. Shifting our focus now to the elite cards. These are rare with only 3 types each of 2 cards. You start with the battle by selecting 3 of these cards. You start with the Silent Doom. This guy is great in traditional combat, but he serves a dual purpose with his assassin ability. This means if he is not revealed, you can sacrifice him to remove any of your opponent's revealed cards. So you can use him as a combat monster or as a safety net. The Mind Flayer is a scary card. Does not look at too much initially with the score values, but with only one high value, which is magic of 15, and the Catastrophe don't even have a magic deck. So what's he all about? Well, the Mind Flayer attacks with its magic value instead, so it's going to beat all but the strongest wizards. When it does though, its ability allows it to take control of that card. So you place the Mind Flayer under your opponent's card and flip its direction, and it's now fighting for you, complete with all its abilities, until your opponent can kill off his own card. More traditional are the Queen's Guard, a more defensive unit, but they are no slouch in attack either. A bit more size as well helps in combat. Plus, if the Hive Queen enters the battle, she really buffs these cards as well. The character cards are next. Each army has 2 heroes and 3 champions and starts the battle with 1 of each. The first hero option for the Catastrophe is probably the most dangerous trick card in the game, the Changeling. Stats that are okay are backed up by the terrifying Changeling ability. What this means is if the Changeling still has not been revealed and your opponent reveals a character card, then you can immediately remove it and replace it with the Changeling. Not only has your opponent just lost a character card, but he now has a dangerous hero right in the middle of their forces. The other hero option is Siege, a much more traditional hero in that he's a combat monster. No special tricks, but his high stat scores are going to allow him to go up against even the most powerful cards your opponent has. Champion choices start with Brute. Like Siege before him, Brute is the no-frills combat choice. With good attack, defense size, he can tear through your opponent lines. Next is the red stripe. Not as powerful as Brute by a stretch, but it does have the tunnel ability, just like the boreworms earlier. However, its stats are significantly better than a boreworm, so your opponent will need to be extra careful at leaving those gaps for him to exploit. While red stripe tunnels below ground, Terror Wing flies above it. The fly ability gives it a lot of movement options, but when it's around you also get a bonus to Flying Reapers. So if you pick Terror Wing, make sure to load up on Flying Reapers to maximize the bonus. And just like all the other decks, the Catastrophe have a Titan card, in this case the Great Devourer, and a Legend card, the Hive Queen. Again, these are probably your best cards in the deck, and you want to get them on the field of battle as soon as possible. You can't start with them though, so the only way to do that is to get the reinforcements in play. Now this is where things get a little bit different. Instead of magic items and magic spells, the Catastrophe get Bio-Evolution. It's 10 cards, and you can play one each magic phase. Each will do something to the card in some specific way. You can have a maximum of 3 Bio-Evolution cards on one card, so effectively allows you to customize your alien monster. Just be wary though, as there are only one use, so if a card gets eliminated, they go into your opponent's conquer pile. But it does allow for a lot of flexibility on how you play the Catastrophe. So let's go and have a look at some of them. We've got Cloaking. The card starts with a Cloaking ability, which makes it harder to hit. Wings. The card gets a Fly ability. Scythe. The cards with Scythe may roll an extra d6 when it attacks in close combat and discard the low scoring dice. Psychic Shield. The card with Psychic Shield is immune to all magic attacks. Poison Glands. The card with Poison Glands gains the Poison ability. Overload. The card with Overload gains +5 for both attack and defense for the next 3 turns. After that, it is removed into your opponent's conquer pile. So you can charge him up to be a big monster and try and break through your opponent lines before he gets destroyed. Extra Arms. The card with Extra Arms rolls 1d6 extra in close combat. Hardened Shooting. The card rolls 1d6 extra in defense. It makes him harder to kill. Hivelink. All your cards in contact with a card with Hivelink gains +2 on all dice rolls. So you want to have them in the middle of your army. Multiple Teeth. The card with Multiple Teeth gains +3 on all close combat attack rolls. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed having a look at the Catastrophe Army, and we'll be back next time with the dragons.